If you're trying to get your vocals to stand out on top of the mix, but not be harsh, brittle, painful, annoying, just to be able to make them as loud as you want without anything getting in the way, this tip's going to help you. This is a tip from Peter Cadis. If you're familiar with who he is, then you already know. But the guy's worked with Trey Anastasio, The National, Interpol, Death Cab for Cutie. The list goes on, and starts back in 1990. The guy's worked with tons of bands, and he knows what's up. And I saw him doing this thing with de-essers, and I've never really worked with de-essers in this way, so I had to talk about it. You've heard of one de-esser, you've heard of two de-essers, but have you heard of this de-esser party fiasco that this guy's got going on? Check this out. Now, he talked about the thing he hates most is harsh, annoying vocal sounds. And this is kind of a similar theme in a lot of stuff he mixes, is this de-esser city here. Check this out. So on the track itself, he's got Soothe 2 first, which a lot of people know, a lot of people use, and basically just centered around 4K, okay, with around the 6 dB mark here. That's where it's at. Just this general curve. It's not really so much about the settings of Soothe. If I'm not mistaken, it's pretty close to what Soothe starts. As soon as you just open it up, it gets really close to this. So maybe a slight tweak or two on there. But if you needed to start working quicker, just turn the attack to make it even faster. Okay, so I just kind of start around here, and then I go faster if it's not grabbing things quick enough. But that usually works. Then he had a Pro Q3 doing very basic stuff. Just literally, the important thing I wanted people to notice is the roll off at 98. He's filtering out low end. And this was a vocal that sounded plenty beefy. So it wasn't like it was over beefy. It was just, he's got this filter here. I wanted 12 dB per octave at 98 hertz. And then he was just taking out some annoying mid-range at around the 300 hertz mark, 317, taking a little bit out at 1.2K, a little bit out at 5.8K, almost 6, and a little bit out at 7.2K. So he just really taking away some harshness. And then he's got his 1176, the bluey, got your blue stripe. This is the UAD version, but he had it on 4-to-1 with a relatively fast release, not all the way fast, but up at number 5. And then we got attack kind of dead in the center. Now, this thing was compressing right in here, about 3 to 5 dB of compression, somewhere in that zone most of the time. And then this is where the party starts, okay? De-esser number 1. Now, if you're familiar with the FabFilter de-esser, it's very transparent. But what I found cool was he's using it on split band mode. He's also using it just at the general, when you open it up, I'm pretty sure this is how it opens up just on default. It's from 6K to 14K. Now, what he mentioned, and I noticed something similar about this too, no matter where you kind of set this thing, it sort of always gives you a 6K sort of de-essing sound. I mean, you could set it up higher, but you're like, this thing works at its optimal between 6 and 14K. Just leaving it there is what I found. And very little movement at all on the threshold and the range. Like the range is 6, the threshold negative 36, and it's going to do some stuff. Okay, so that's the first de-esser. The second de-esser, he's using Renaissance de-essers in series, similar to how we would do compression, like a little bit here on one, a couple dB gain reduction, 1 or 2, and then maybe 1 or 2 on another one to give it more and make it sound more natural than just 4 dB on one or 8 dB on one. I mean, that's the concept here, but with de-essers, all right? So using things in series can often give you a better result, but it's not only that, it's where he sets these de-essers, all right? Now, could you do all of this on a multiband? Maybe, but it wouldn't be the same because, the de-essers are multiband. Like, that's what it is. It's a multiband compressor fixated on one area. But they all sort of, I find de-essers work better for taming harshness than a multiband does most of the time. And I have the Pro MB and I like it, but I have found that when I'm trying to remove harshness in a more natural way, if you do put on a few of these de-essers, it does work. So check this out. The first one, 4K, and he's got split mode, just like on the other one. He was in split mode. He wasn't on the wide mode. All right. Now, in terms of type, you want this type, the upside down frown. and he had it at -36 with the range at -5. Okay, now that was doing a little bit, but that's the 4K de-esser. So the way I think about this, I think about 4K is his first one after he's doing his 6K to 14K Pro DS on the Fab filter. That's first, okay, 6K to 14K. Then we got our 4K, the one I just talked about, right? Then we got a 2K de-esser. Now this I found cool and interesting also. Not a lot of people talk about getting down that low when you're trying to de-ess. You know, when I saw Jason Joshua do 4.5K de-ess, I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting because it's a little lower than I typically de-ess in some cases. But now we see 2K de-essing. And he described this as there's nothing worse than getting painful vocals biting your ears off. So we go down to 2K with a de-esser to just get rid of some of the harshness that winds up popping up there when it's hurting us. And I thought that was interesting. I like this concept. All right, so -30 on the threshold, range -6. Now, so far, if you're following, 6K to 14K, then on the first RDSer, 4K, the second RDSer, 2K, and the third RDSer, a little above 6K. So another little above 6K DS he had going with the threshold similarly done, -37.5, and then the range at -4. So little bits on all of these is really what he's doing, but at the different frequencies, that's the magic I find. So after that one, we're not done yet. The de-esser party closes with this is the one that comes with Pro Tools, the good old Dyne 3 de-esser. And he does something interesting here. He literally takes the frequency all the way up to 16K, puts the range at -0.1 dB, which should be doing practically nothing. I mean, that's what it should be doing. But if you have too much high end on your vocal, like if you have an EQ where you've boosted a lot of high end, then this thing will start to work. And it's like a tell for him to know if he has too much high end on the vocal. So you will see this thing moving no matter what, very little between like 0 and let's say -3, it might shoot to every once in a while. But if it goes higher than that, you got way too much high end on the vocal. So he was liking it from 0 to -3, somewhere in here. Every once in a while, it would get to that. And he found that was helpful just to really understand how much was getting on in terms of how much high end is he really putting on there. And also he found I think it does something that he likes where it tames it out a little bit. Now, I did this on a song and I thought it sounded awesome because it did allow me to really turn the vocal up significantly without any of the stuff that I would typically be battling with painfulness while I'm, is it the right volume? I want it louder, but it's a little painful and I don't want to just notch it with an EQ. This was a solid option. Now, he sent this, this was on the track itself, all right? Then that went into a bus, so that's why I have it shown here, the routing he was doing. Bus 1, 2, picked up over here. Bus 1, 2, he had another Pro Q3 doing a similar thing where he's basically filtering out everything below 78 again, and then just taking away the harshness at 250, but 1 dB at 600 hertz, 1 dB, or at half of a dB at around 6K, a little below 6K, okay? And then half of a dB at 7.2K. So it just cuts, all right? Then he had another de-esser, and this de-esser, typical, as you would just open it up, pretty much starts here, 6 to 14K, split band on the single vocal. Then he had Studer Tape Machine. He's a fan of the A800, like we all are. It's an amazing plugin. And if you're not familiar with it looking like this, you just got to click that open button. You get to the inside. And this is really cool. I probably have mentioned this on a few videos at this point, but the HF, the high frequency driver, very cool to be able to tweak these things. But good rule of thumb, you got to set this first before you tweak, because as soon as you change this, these things all change. So bottom line is he had it pretty much the stock settings also. 456, this is the kind of tape, like 250 is the oldest one, GP9 is like the most modern one. So the stock way it comes up is pretty much like this. The calibration, which is the flux, how hard you're hitting the tape, was at +6. He had it stays on 15 inches per second because that's what comes up when you start it up. And, if you're tweaking anything, maybe you're tweaking how much level is getting into the plug-in with this. Maybe you're tweaking how much comes out of it. But he wasn't messing with any of these. Just also note the noise, this noisy thing, it was off because he doesn't want that tape noise thing happening. So, this is cool. Also, don't forget to mess with the Repro EQ, the reproduction head EQ right here. It has a high frequency and a low frequency adjustment. So that's why this tape machine is so cool, because it has not only the amazing flavor of tape you can get, but also some controls and settings on it that even get you closer to maybe something you're hearing in your head that you want. And important to note, the tape breaks up the quickest, I find, when you're at the lowest numbers. And it's like the newer tape kind of handles the high frequencies better. So you get more high frequency information as you crank this up. Like to GP9 is the most high fidelity is how I look at it. All right. And 30 inches per second would be like the most high fidelity. I sort of look at it that way. And if I wanted it to break up soon and have as much low end as possible, I'd probably turn this down to 7.5 IPS and leave it at 250. Just to, so if you've never, it's the most basic explanation of a tape machine I can, because I don't want this video to be a half hour. But the point is, get familiar with tape machines, start messing with them. And a lot of people who've never used them, I'm in that boat. I didn't grow up using a tape machine, so I had to learn how to use it. And they're very cool. They're very cool with what they do with everything. After the Studer, he had a Pro MB, and the Pro MB, basically if you just click down, just if you like literally, this is so much of the stuff was just the default. Like that's the other thing I noticed from him is it'll tweak out. He'll tweak stuff very little, but most of it's just the default and where these bands are set. And then an RVox, just applying -5 to the comp, just like he's getting -5 here. Sometimes he'll compensate for this. So if he's getting about 5 dB here, turning this down to -5, he might turn this down to -5 or not. But really, that was all. It was as simple as I could have ever seen it. Very cool to see somebody who does, a very kind of straightforward chain, but has their own way of doing sort of, their own thing with de-essing. This reminded me of the Jason Joshua trick where he uses like 8 instances of that NLS bus plugin to get his drum sound. I'm like, it's a common theme. You'll notice that a lot of people will do very little on a lot of things rather than doing a ton on one. And that allows you more flexibility, and it also changes the sound completely when you do that. So next thing he had going was he sent the vocal out to a physical EMT 140. Like he has the unit, right? So if you're going to do that, things to note was he didn't EQ going into it at all, but he did EQ on the way back. So once it hit, the vocal hit the tape machine, as it came back into the return, he was EQing there. So he was EQing, basically he had the EQ 1 band on just to flip the phase on it. He had a Pro Q3 taking out everything south of 200 and a little bit of a 1 dB dip at 2K. And the rest was all in. So, the physical version of the EMT 140 definitely sounds a little different than the UAD 140, but, I don't think if you've never tried the original real one in real life, I don't think you'll notice a difference or care. By all means, collect as much gear as you want, but if you don't have it, like I don't, I use the plug-in, and he had the width all the way at 100%. Just so you know, he had it wide open, he was saying. He never feels the need to sort of back it off, just wide open. And there's, I have a tendency to like the Blue Plate Special setting. I think a lot of this stuff is so funny how our internal everything plays into what we like or not. Blue Plate Special makes me think of food. I like food. I get hungry when I'm mixing, and I choose the Blue Plate Special because of the name, and I liked it. So, it sounds good. If it didn't sound good, I probably wouldn't like the name, but that's where I started at one point, and it's hard to forget it because it's called that for me. So it just reminds me of food. So I was in. Now, what else we got? That's it. That's it. That was his vocal sound. Now, I just sort of wanted to show you that, because of the way he's doing it, it actually winds up on a track, not a bus, for him because he's printing that back after it runs through the reverb. So he's recording it back in. So he would be doing it on a track, not a bus. But you could just send it to a bus like we typically would with any effects. Make this bus 5 or, bus 5, 6, and then send it from here. That's another thing I wanted to mention. I like to make reverbs mono most of the time because I can move it. So in other words, we don't have the hardware, we're using plugins. If we want to use a plate and we want to use a hall and we want the plate on the left and the hall on the right, experiment with stuff like that. Just, it adds some flavors to what you got going on. It also helps when you want to send something to a reverb and have that thing be only on the left. It's very hard to do that if you got a stereo reverb. It winds up being on both sides. So if you really want to move stuff and get it to go where you're trying to make it go, mono reverbs are where it's at. Sometimes you put a plugin like a reverb on and it will default to non-mono, sometimes. Let's just see if the UMT, yes, we can get a mono one. That's cool. All right, just making sure we can get a mono one. Okay, because some of I noticed that with some plugins, they'll just default to a stereo version, which makes it tough to do what I'm explaining. But in this case, we can. I'd go to track. If I wanted mono, I'd split into mono. We got our left and right. And now we could literally pan something left, and it will only exist on the left. All right, and we could change this from just a different setting within the 140 or put a different reverb on it completely. And I have a tendency to like experimenting with that. Different feels of reverbs on different sides sound very cool and unique. You should try that. So I hope you dug it. Any questions, throw stuff in the comments. More stuff like this to come. Learning a trick like that, I think, will really just add to your arsenal. It's not about using every trick you learn on every mix you do. But now, if you're faced with a vocal that might be a little more harsh than you want it, you got some tools to combat it and make it as loud as you want when you're done. I found this kind of thing works surprisingly well. And you'd be surprised. A lot of us are sitting there thinking 2 de-essers is like the most we could use. Nah, we could use, 6? What did he use? 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He used 5 de-essers and then 1 on the bus. So 6, and then a multiband, the Pro MB. So 7. He used 7 instances of de-essing in a way. If you count the Pro MB, it's 7. If you don't count that, it's 6. Pretty interesting, pretty cool. Hope you dig it. More to come. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment. I appreciate it. Evan Jaffe, Custom Cut Studios. You guys got this. Take it easy.